I'm going to suggest we open the meeting unless Stephen has a suggestion otherwise. Sujata will not be here. Joseph, Jeannie, Tom, Jerry, looks like Julian's on. So I'm going to suggest we open the meeting. And Travis, I'm going to give you, I guess I'm going to say we should do that in after. Oh, this is a chat. Let me see what it says in the chat here. Isabel is right. Okay. Oh, and there's Tom. Okay. Well, Travis, I will go ahead and in 10 seconds open the meeting unless I hear otherwise.
Just a comment, I'm going to turn my video off while I finish my...
Okay, so I'm opening the meeting. This is the July 15th regular meeting of the Issaquah Transportation Advisory Board. My name is Cynthia Cross. I'm currently the chair of the board, and I'm opening the meeting now. And our first item of business is to approve the minutes. Did everyone have a chance to review the minutes that were submitted with the materials? I don't see anybody that said no. I will. I
have a question about, I think I'm counted as an excused absence, but I was present. I was just having some trouble logging on. So I don't know if that needs to be changed. It's like it's just some small potatoes thing, but.
That's a great question. I'm gonna go ahead and request the staff go ahead and change that and just maybe put part-time technical difficulties or something. Just, I think it'd be good to note her attendance. It's like Joseph's here also, so that's great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, so anybody, all those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye or wave your, show me a.
Aye.
Sorry, I just had something pop up on my screen that I did not ask for, and it's covering half of you. There we go. Okay, I'm not seeing any opposed, so I'm going to consider the minutes approved. We see Jerry now too. Great. Before we go on, and I turn it over to the staff, I'm just going to say that a couple of quick announcements. There was a really interesting training for chairs of committees and boards at Issaquah that Mayor Polly put on, and I've just made a couple of really minor changes, but I thought she had some good points. And one of them is to recognize alternates. So we will not have Sujata tonight. And so Julian, of the alternates, Julian logged on first. So that means even though we're not making any decisions tonight, if we were to make a decision, that would make Julian not an alternate, but a regular member for tonight. And I think if we don't see Janie, then that would make Jerry also a regular. And of course, discussion is all there is no distinction between an alternate and a regular for discussion. It would only be relevant if we were voting. So I guess I hadn't thought about what to do to recognize an alternate if I don't know if somebody who's delayed is going to be joining us. That would be Jeannie. But if Jeannie doesn't join us, that would put Jerry into the regular category. Anyway, I had a couple other minor comments about ways to encourage everyone to speak. And I'll just say now, definitely, I think we've been doing a good job using the chat. When you have something to say, it's best not to put your substance in the chat because it doesn't get recorded in the same way. And I will use the chat to call on people, but I reserve the right to change the order. The default would be by calling people in order in the chat, but I would change that up if I feel like we need to hear from some people we hadn't heard from. And with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to staff for the first, let's see, I'm just toggling over to my, oh, I'm sorry, public comment. Do we have any public comment this evening? It looks like we do have one visitor. I think Connie Marsh is on here. How do I keep that from popping up?
Okay. I do want to speak. I see I'm off mute, but I have video. That's all right. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, good. So my name is Connie Marsh, and I'm to the tour of projects shortly for the Title 18 update. So I'm going to speak fast as usual, and you can file these in the agenda order if you can remember. Now, I don't understand in the update from Mayor Holly. I heard in another committee is that audience comment needn't be responded to, but for a community member who speaks, that sort of puts comments into a void that you never hear any feedback on. And so that's frustrating. I know what a person is supposed to do if they spend their commenting and it's just like goes away. I mean, it's sort of like, what's the point? So I didn't really understand that part of the leadership update. Now I'm going to begin. So I see that this talks about mandated projects, but I feel like concurrency requirements have created a different list of mandated projects, especially as it pertains to the Issaquah plan. And so I see there's an item for future projects, but I don't understand if these mandated in theory projects from the Central Issaquah Plan Environmental Impact Statement. That's the only reason we do it is we said we were to do these projects. I'm not sure that y'all have ever had a discussion of what it means to have a bunch of extensive projects be mandated in order to build the town exactly what those projects are. I hope I'm just speaking gibberish. Okay, so then I am going to hop forward in the gaps conversation. The little map you're supposed to be using to understand where the city shows gaps, I think is super read, and we then went to see if there were corresponding projects for those gaps, and I was unable to match the potential list of projects with the gaps. And so when I'm trying to figure out which gaps we should fill, I have sort of a memory of it, but I found that very hard. And I can't imagine anybody else to do that successfully easily. So if there could be a map of the projects and then a discussion of whether a new project, okay, you probably wait. And then I want to emphasize again that the language shows tiers for walk projects is not prioritized. It is just sort of slightly different styles projects. Right now it's 1, 2, 3, 4, so it feels prioritized. And so I just wanted to remind you all of that. And then I send an email, which I assume that you got. The question is, can little red lines that are the gaps on the map be broken down into easier to manage projects that can have a impact? They seem to have been fed like from the walk and roll plan to large projects like the Mount Side Drive project, where there is basically no sidewalk on the highly walked road, and it's a big safety issue. Some people's only pathway to a park is not considered a safety issue somehow in your list. And in the walk and roll plan, they said it was a $6 million project because they wanted to do bike lanes on both sides, as I recall. Really, the main safety issue is just to help people to walk safely their neighborhood road. Now, the only way to walk safely is to shortcut a cemetery, which the Parks Department doesn't like. And so, as the example, in that project broken down to something way smaller to address a large neighborhood safety concern. And I would like to understand have that type of a good conversation for a myriad of those projects on the red squiggly map. And then that's it. Look at that. I hope that was too horrifying, and enjoy meeting. I'm gonna go walk in the sunshine. Bye, y'all.
Thank you, Connie. Okay, any other public comment? And would Isabel have the list? I don't think we have access to the non-panelists.
I don't see anyone else joining in.
Okay, well, when we get back together in person in September, it'll be a lot easier to see if there's people that want to speak, and we won't have to rely on technology. And I want to just acknowledge that it was challenging to follow because Connie was definitely breaking up, and we were struggling a little bit with that. I'll also try to remember to remind public commenters that we have chosen for this board to limit comments to 3 minutes. Anyway, so now we're moving on to regular business. It looks like Stephen is up for the TIP, unless I'm looking at the wrong.
Well, that's actually John.
Sorry, I am looking at the wrong. I called up another agenda. Anyway.
Right.
Thank you.
Yes,
here we go. I got the right one up, and it's John. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. And Stephen or Isabel, are one of you able to make it so I can share my screen?
Is that working?
No, it's not. Oh, wait, there it goes. Perfect. PowerPoint. Me2. There. And can everyone see my presentation? Wonderful. Good evening, everyone. I'm John Mortensen, Transportation Engineering Manager, and the tab is working through reviewing the projects in the Transportation Improvement Program, and this presentation kind of kicks off that process. The overview or the agenda for this presentation are to give an overview of the TIP process, or the Transportation Improvement Program process that we go through, and to talk about the projects and tonight we'll talk about the projects that we just put into the bucket of annual or mandated projects that we're going to review. Every year, the city puts together a 6-year transportation improvement program. And as part of that, we look at projects that we do every year, like the pavement management program. And in the mobility master plan, it talked about how we would continue with projects that are underway. We had another bucket that we called mandated projects. And for that bucket, we really were looking at projects that, from a safety or legal point of view, we need to do, whether it's upgrading the curb ramps in the city as part of the ADA improvements project, or replacing the Black Nugget wall as a safety. And then we also have the new priority projects that, as part of the mobility master plan, we identified projects that are new priorities, and these could be existing projects that have a higher priority now, or it could be new projects that were identified in the mobility master plan. This process began last month when we talked about the Newport Way Maple to Sunset project as a project underway and we discussed the undergrounding of overhead utilities, gave an overview of the project, and talked about the retaining wall requirements in Central Issaquah. This month, as I mentioned, we're working on the mandated and annual projects. Next month, we'll talk about the future year projects, which in a lot of ways is a good time to talk about those projects that are also required by the environmental approval for Central Issaquah that Connie commented on, that those are projects that we are aware of that they do need to get built as part of the build out for Central Issaquah. And in September, we'll continue the discussion, and we're going to hold opportunity in October in case we need to continue the discussion then. For the projects that we classified as annual or mandated, we're not going to talk about doing any changes to the pavement management program or the concrete maintenance program. Those ones follow a lot more of a data-driven program, where the concrete maintenance program will work on upgrading the curb ramps as part of the pavement management program, and also takes care of the high edges on our sidewalks throughout the community. The pavement management program that looks at data for the condition of the pavement and the recommended time to do a treatment. And for example, pretty soon in the city, there's going to be a contractor doing some crack filling. And then later on this year, another contractor will be doing some overlays. Tonight, we're going to talk about a new project for the city. It's called the Strategic Small Capital Project. This is a project that came out of the city's strategic plan. The city's strategic plan, one of the things that came out of it is a lot of times we'll have these big, expensive, ambitious projects, but the community has a strong desire to make improvements that make a big difference, whether it's a sidewalk gap or improving a crossing or making some safety improvements. Another one of the mandated or annual projects is the ADA Improvements Project. And this is one that we don't have budget for this year, but next year we're going to be doing a lot of work on the ADA improvements. We've got the project, and we're going to do some work on our ADA transition plan. And then for bridge repairs and slide repairs, we're not going to change those projects because those are more driven by maintaining the city's assets and safety. For the transportation improvement program process that we're going through with the board, timing and next steps. Next month, we're going to talk about the future projects, and that's one that I'm really looking forward to because I think there's some really good conversations and feedback and that we can get from the board next month. For the process to update the TIP next year, because the 2022 to 2027 TIP has been approved, in February, we'll meet again with the board. We'll review the transportation improvement program, get the board's feedback on recommendations, and then work with council to get the TIP adopted again next year. And that concludes my presentation.
So I assume, John, that you're ready to take questions?
Yes.
Go ahead and put, is my chat functioning properly? Does anybody have any questions? Looks like Julian has a hand up. Am I missing,
Yeah, I don't know where to put the hand up thing.
No, actually I prefer you to put it in the chat. I
chat,
just
okay.
was not seeing anything in the chat, and I want to make sure I wasn't missing. I was seeing some other earlier chats. Tom has a question, and I think Julian had his hand up. Julian, why don't you go first and then Tom? And then Julian, just tell me for my own technical keeping up, did you put anything in the chat or just, I just saw your hand
No,
go physically?
I just raised my hand.
Okay,
this time.
cool.
Yeah.
Just, yeah, that's fine. I do prefer the chat just because it's easy for me to track, but that's fine. You go ahead. Go ahead, Julian.
So, John, clarifying question. Does the pavement / concrete maintenance also include structural repairs of the road? You know, the base issues that, you know, these roads have?
Sort of. As part of the pavement management program, they'll do full depth pavement repairs. But if a road gets to a point where it's really bad, it's best to just rebuild it and have a separate project instead of trying to incorporate it into a smaller project that tries to mostly do overlays. So there, I guess to answer your question, there's a line at some point where the pavement management program would take care of it. And once the roadway condition gets bad enough, then you'd want to have a full reconstruction of the road.
And this would presumably not just fit into small capital projects, or?
Can you say that again? I needed to put my headphones on a little better.
This would fit into small capital projects, or what we're talking about today.
Are you, for your question, are you talking still about the pavement management stuff, or like if it needed to be rebuilt, or are you just
Yeah, if it
talking in
needed to
general?
rebuild. If it needed to be rebuilt.
Then that
yeah.
wouldn't be the small capital project. It would be its own capital project.
Nice.
And yeah.
Tom, sorry.
It's okay. I just want to make sure that so I think what I hear is, once it becomes beyond the pavement rehab, it basically becomes its own project, and then becomes more of a capital project as opposed to the annual or mandated projects. And my question is for today, for a purpose of today, are we going to look at any of these annual or mandated to have any blessing on those or concurrence on those, or that, or mostly just to kind of inform us of the step in the process?
Tom, my headphones are kind of quiet. Can you repeat the question?
Sure. I guess my question for today's meeting, we're talking about the annual and mandated projects. Is it anything that we're going to look at and review and give concurrence or have questions on, or is that just kind of more of an update that those are just ongoing?
More of just an update that those are ongoing. That tonight's big discussion to get the TAB's feedback is for prioritizing small improvements as part of the small strategic capital project.
Okay. And that's part of the TIP project review coming up then.
Yeah, it's the small strategic capital. It's its own project, but it's a project that has a lot of flexibility where it doesn't have a defined location. It's to go throughout the city where there's need, which is why we're really wanting the feedback from the TAB, because I think you guys have a good feel for where we should prioritize the money in that project.
That's my other question is, there's a list of projects and we look at, would help prioritize which ones should be done first, which ones are more critical. Okay.
Yes.
I'm good. Thanks.
So I'm not seeing any other questions, but I think part of it is because I'm not hearing the staff asking us to weigh in about, I mean, the document that's a table of 6 is pretty straightforward. And then the time dedicated after we hear from Issaquah for the small capital project is essentially one of the projects on that table. I myself spent a lot of time trying to sort through and figure out, what I'm looking at and what I'm being asked to respond to. So I had a discussion, and I should be not asking this question because I already met with staff about this, but now I'm trying to figure out why we dedicated 40 minutes to this part of the meeting. And I was getting confused. So I guess my question is to either Isabel or John. It sounded like you didn't need any more for us on 4A, but help remind me why we dedicated 40 minutes to 4A. It may have been because I thought people would probably just have a tendency to want to chew on some of that stuff a little bit. But that's not really where we're directing the TAB's attention. So maybe if we want, one of you can remind me why we dedicated all that time, and if you've gotten what you need on 4A.
Cynthia, we just missed to update the agenda when we first discussed the items on the agenda. This was
Okay.
going to be a discussion item, but then as we prepare for this meeting, we changed it to be an informational item.
Okay. So we probably didn't need 40 minutes. I'm not missing something. I just kept thinking I was missing a big piece of content, but it sounds like we just, didn't catch that. So it sounds like, so maybe you can just, before we move on, tell us, there is that Appendix B, future year projects. And I'm sure, like most of us, I spent a little time just looking through it and understanding it. A lot of these are familiar. Maybe just wrap up by telling us kind of what we should be doing in our minds with those projects. That's what we're going to be talking about in the future for the 2022 TIP.
John,
I'm
would
going
you
to make
like to
sure
take
I'm
that
looking
one?
at the,
So I want to make sure I understand when I get materials sent to me, and I probably should have asked you this before this meeting, but there's a lot of substance in there, and I think all of us on the tab are wondering, like, are we supposed to discuss that later? Like, do you want any, we haven't taken the time to go through the future projects, and so I want to make sure I understand why you included them in the materials to go out to the tab, because I don't want us to miss anything or opportunities to discuss or share feedback.
Yeah, my comment that I was just posting is any questions that people might have on the 4AA and 4AB TIP mandate projects and the approved TIP projects. But those two tables are just both for our information if there's anybody that has questions on those.
Well, I think Isabel's going to give a presentation about the small
Strategic.
capital project specifically. I was just trying to figure out what we're supposed to be.
right.
Right, and that's the 4B, I thought.
I'm sorry, she's going to give a presentation on 4B, which is a subset of the overall projects in 4A. I'm struggling a little bit with what I'm supposed to be doing with that list of future projects at this time.
4B, right, or 4.
No, not 4B.
4AB.
No, it's in 4A. It's in the materials for 4A.
Right, I call that B because there's an A tip and then the B is 2022-27. That's why I'm calling 4A.
I'm sorry. It's AA.
Yeah, AA and AB as opposed to
Lowercase a is the first agenda item, and there are two uppercase A attachments to 4A.
So
That's where the confusion. So I'm going to let John answer my question.
Sure. So I want to maybe I'll just share my slide or screen to make sure I'm looking at the right materials. Share. Is this the one you're asking about?
No, I'm asking about the next one.
The next one, okay.
Which is 4AB.
4AB.
Tom's right. Yep. Right there.
Oh, okay. There we go. So that is, here, let me stop sharing my screen. Just more of a reference as we keep going through this. That way we can have kind of to show, that way people can be familiar for each meeting about the complete list of the projects and to give the tab the opportunity to get familiar with stuff and give them more time to prepare for the discussions coming up ahead.
Okay, I thought so. I just wanted to make sure. And I will just make one small request, and that's just make sure the headings. I spent a bunch of time because I kept trying to make everything jive and make sure I understood. And it took me a while to figure out just to attach the titles and the appendices and like make it maybe just a tiny bit more idiot proof.
Yeah, I mean, that might be kind of what you're saying. That might be like a 4D and just additional information for keeping in. I thought it was part of the initial presentation. That's why I was asking what we were supposed to do with this additional information. So that's trying to understand why it was in the section 4A. But really, the
So-
4A-B is really just kind of information just for upcoming projects to keep in mind.
At the risk of beating this to death, I just want to just point out that if you look at the memo, it says attachments, and then it says A, and then there's a title, and then, and especially B, and then there's a title. It's not, they don't always jive. So we just want to tighten that up a little bit.
No, thanks for the feedback. We'll
Sorry.
work on trying to make it more clear for next time.
I know you guys work really hard to make it clear,
Yeah.
and I think we're really close, but just attachment numbers, titles, make
Yep.
sure things reference each other. So we know where to direct our attention.
No, that's
and I
very
think
good
we've-
feedback, because for a lot of times it makes complete sense to us, and then
Yes.
you guys are the true test. And thank you.
Yes. All right. So we've beat that one pretty good. Let's go ahead and move on to agenda item 4B. 4B. Unless anybody had any other questions. Seeing none, go ahead.
Okay, and now try to share my screen. Stephen, would you give me the ability to share my screen? All right. Can you see the beginning of the presentation? Can you hear me well?
Yes, good.
Okay. Let me know if I need to speak louder. So I am Isabel. I will be speaking about the strategic small capital projects. Right. So as John explained earlier, in this year transportation improvement program, projects have been classified into 5 categories. There's the annual projects, projects underway, mandated responsibilities, new priority projects, and long-term projects. We may recall that annual projects are those that meet the requirements to be funded by a program. The strategic small capitals projects is a new annual capital improvement program that strategically designs and constructs small capital improvements. The purpose of this program is to complete near-term connections and efficiencies in the mobility system, consistent with the strategic plan mobility goals and objectives. This project focuses on addressing gaps in the mobility system and implementing small safety improvements. As a result from previous discussions, we have received feedback from the board about prioritizing new network gaps, connectivity, safety, and to incorporate equity in the strategic small capital projects list. The board identified the need to provide diversity in terms of project types and size, and would support the allocation of more funding towards implementation of smaller projects after having evaluated those with network gaps identified in the Mobility Master Plan. The Mobility Master Plan identifies new walking policies categorized into 4 tiers. So Tier 1 includes enhanced pedestrian facilities on both sides of the roads for arterials and collectors inside Central Issaquah, Old Town, and Issaquah Highlands neighborhoods. Tier 2 includes standard sidewalks on both sides of the streets, inside the streets that are within 1/4 of a mile of schools, senior centers, and public community amenities, such as hospitals and transit centers. Also, for those local streets that are inside Central Issaquah, Old Town, and Issaquah Highlands. So Tier 3 include standard sidewalks on one side of arterials and collectors that are outside of central Issaquah, Old Town, and Issaquah Highlands. And Tier 4 include to lower speed limits to 20 miles per hour or less on local streets, including commercial areas outside of central Issaquah, Old Town, and Issaquah Highlands. It's important that we note that these tiers, although they are categorized by numbers, we are not implying any type of priority or ranking systems with these tiers. It's just a way to kind of group those policies together. Okay, I know this map may be a little bit difficult to see through the presentation, but you have those on your agenda materials. This map is included in the Mobility Master Plan to identify the projects by tier, which we could use as a guidance for strategic small capital projects list. So Tier 1 projects, we can tell right away that Tier 1 projects would not be easy nor cheap to construct, and there is basically a reason why they are included on this list as gaps, and often those would include critical areas that would prevent those sidewalks from getting built, as we can see in the blue for Tier 1 projects. Sorry.
So
Yeah.
no, Christy has a question, and I have a
Oh.
feeling she was maybe a clarifying thing to answer at this time. I'm going to hazard a guess.
Yes,
So Christy,
please.
wanna go?
I don't see the comment,
No,
so
she
please
sent it to
let me
me.
know. Mhm.
No, it's okay. She sent it to me.
Hi, Isabel. I don't know if this is the right time in your presentation, so I apologize for interrupting. I'm curious, and again, it might be too far in the details, but in terms of a Tier 1 project, and I know you just talked about critical areas being a level of difficulty, 17th Avenue Northwest being labeled as a Tier 1. How do I want to say this? I was a little taken aback given the large pedestrian bridge just to the west of that same road and the huge investment with that. And then also knowing that there's another pedestrian bike crossing that is on the park strategic plan, but also on the TIP as a future plan for a crossing at that location as well. So it seems like a pretty large investment. So I'm wondering, is there a policy in the MMP to address those kinds of conflicts potentially? Does that make sense?
Well, yes. If you could clarify your question about the policy. So the reason, just to help you with the reason why these are identified as Tier 1 is because we don't have sidewalk on both sides of the street. We do have on one side the pedestrian connection, but we don't have on the east side of that area. We don't have any pedestrian facilities. And if you could help.
Sure. So I'll take that one step level. So in situations where there is a bridge per se, and then also nearby local connectivity as part of the network, and there's potentially huge conflicts with the on ramp and the off ramp right there at that location on the east side. It seems that project is too much. So I'm wondering, is there a policy that allows for that not to happen in a Tier 1 when there's a conflict?
Yes, let me.
Can I suggest, this is Cynthia, can I suggest we put a pin in that, because I had a similar reaction, if I'm reading it correctly, to the Highlands, because there's that pedestrian facility that gets you down the hill. And I'm wondering if we should put a pin in that, note that, unless Isabel, you want to answer the question, but I think it's pointing out a broader question, which is like, where are we at exactly with with this, because that may not be the only situation. And so there may be the need to enhance what we put in the MMP with some interpretation or some qualifiers. And I also had a comment about something that maybe was an interpretation of what we put in the MMP regarding the sidewalk tiers and the MMP policy 4.1 that came from. So would it be okay, Krista, if we put a pin in that and then came back and figure out the best way to discuss it? Is that okay, Isabel?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, we got you off your groove. The screen's not up on our screen anymore.
Yeah,
The presentation
sorry,
is no
there
longer up.
again.
Yeah.
Can you see the presentation?
Yep, now we can.
Okay, so first of all, let me just clarify. So these are the tiers identified in the mobility master plan, and we are using this as a guideline to include some projects, if we may, on the strategic small capitals project list. With as Cynthia and Christy had mentioned before, yes, you are right about like the tier 1 projects seem like too much to do. They are, and particularly because those will be including sidewalks on both sides of the road. There is a huge critical, most of them has critical areas, and those are also arterials and collectors roads. Let's see if I can go. I'm sorry. So as we can also see, the highest volume of the projects are in tier 2, which are those identified in the magenta color. And it's basically because those are projects that would include all local roads inside Central Issaquah, Old Town, and Issaquah Highlands, and also those in proximities to sensitive locations like school, close to schools and senior communities and community centers. From among all these neighborhoods, we could say that Central Issaquah would be more expensive to construct, since we'll need to also include planter strips. That's part of our standards to build inside Issaquah. Along with the construction of sidewalks, we will need to build planter strips as well. So tier 3 includes a few projects. You can see here on SR 900 all the way, and there's also a few gaps in Front Street and inside Old Town neighborhood as well. So tier 4 is not on this map, and that's basically because lowering speed limits would involve changes to our code, so it's not in particular to specific locations. We have also identified a list of relatively easy to implement strategic safety improvement projects with the purpose of addressing those needs that are not covered with existing programs and without having to invest like significant cost investments using and with using our existing staff. So we have identified 4 of these projects, and I would like to note that we have done a change on this slide. And we have, because we removed the Highlands Drive and Discovery Drive stop line project, as we confirmed with Public Works Operations that project in particular was already completed. So we deleted that project from this list, which size it down to 4 projects inside this list. So one of the projects is the City Hall ADA route, and this project is to clearly identify ADA routes and mitigate high edges within City Hall lot. The next project will be Park Drive and Park Drive crosswalk improvements. This one is to eliminate parking areas that are blocking pedestrian crosswalks along Park Drive. As you can see in the picture, or you might not be able to see it, believe it or not, behind that minivan, there is a crosswalk. So you can see that is a potential hazard to pedestrians using that crosswalk. 25th Avenue and Kirkwood Place pedestrian crossing project in Issaquah Highlands is to improve the crossing at the end of Kirkwood Wooner. As you can see in this picture here, there is a pedestrian ramp right in the middle of the entrance of that Wooner. So what we would like to pursue with this project would be possibly relocating that crosswalk even a few feet away from the entrance of the Wooner would help with the pedestrian routes. East Lake Sammamish Parkway and Southeast 56th, no right LED sign. This is to install this type of signs that we see on the slide. This is to install a no right turn LED blankout signs for East Lake Sammamish Parkway going southbound and Southeast 56 going eastbound to prohibit motorists from turning right when crossing, when the crossing signal for the trail, for the East Lake Sammamish Trail is on. And this would provide, this would minimize the pedestrian vehicle conflicts. So these type of projects, since those projects will basically be done in-house, the main cost for these projects would be for materials, and the cost for each one would range between $5,000 to $15,000. And if we were to implement all of the projects, we can think that the cost for all these 4 projects specifically could range between $25,000 and $30,000. I see there is a question or a comment in the chat box.
Is now a good time to, because should we open up to questions?
Yeah, I put in the point that I'll ask them and comment after the presentation.
Yeah, I was just wondering, Isabel, are you ready for that? Or do you want to continue it?
Well, if there's a question now, we will provide opportunity for your feedback if that's the best timing for you. But if you have any questions about the slides that we are presenting or any project in particular, yeah, feel free to provide that question at the time.
Go ahead, Julian.
Okay, well, I guess I had a question about the East Lake Sammamish Southeast 56. I'm in Chicago right now, and I've been observing a ton of these various lights. They always, the pedestrian lights always turn on, I don't know, 5 seconds before the general traffic lights turn on to green. Would that be something possible to incorporate with this no right LED sign project?
I know that we there has been discussion, and it does. I don't have the name for that right now, but there has been discussions about the possibility of including this. But there will be something like really new for us. But that's something that we can certainly evaluate.
Because this sort of project would definitely enhance safety on that crosswalk. It always seems very risky. You always have to wait for cars,
and that does help to make sure we start providing the pedestrian enough time to cross and why this always
So Julian, does that
jumps
like stay red for the traffic and gives the pedestrians a chance to start walking before it turns, and that way they're already in the crosswalk and wait the light turns? Is that what the delay does?
I'm sorry, Tom.
Oh, no, there's a question for Julian as far as what he's
sorry.
observing in Chicago. Does that give him a chance to be walking across the sidewalk before the green light for the vehicles comes on?
Yeah, basically what I've been doing or experiencing is I get to start 5 seconds before the people start turning right so I get a lot of headway into the crosswalk.
Yes, and Stephen just helped me out with the name for that term, and it's pedestrian lead. So they provide the pedestrian signal phase a couple of seconds before the traffic. That can also help with making sure that the green that we provide to traffic has the least conflict with turning with pedestrians. And I will share my screen again because somehow it keeps locking my presentation off. And I'll try this again. Can you
The pedestrian
see?
queue jumping away.
Can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, great. Is there any other questions before I move on?
Looks like there's a few comments and questions. I'm going to suggest you I think you only have one more slide, and I suspect we can bounce back. So why don't you just go to the next slide, and then we'll open it up to the rest of the questions. And I see 3 or 4 people queued up. If it's okay with you guys, we should.
Okay, let's do that. And through the discussion also, if we need to go back to any of the slides, we can do that certainly. Yes, and of course, the next item would be the discussion that we would like to have today goes around these 2 questions. First of all, we would like to know what the board thinks about the projects that we have presented tonight to be included in the strategic small capital projects list. Are these projects enough, or should we consider including any other projects with our strategic small capital projects list? And the other question would be, how can these projects would be prioritized? What kind of strategy could we use to prioritize these projects? And now I'll open up for the board to discuss.
David, if I'm tracking correctly, was the first one. Go ahead, David.
Thanks. I'm not so familiar with the 25th Avenue project up in the Highlands. I know where it is. I'm got to take your word for it. However, I will tell you that 56th and East Lake Sammamish, I'm extremely familiar with that. And that light would definitely help a lot. I ride bicycle a lot down through the trail, and that intersection, of course, has some history because we've actually had a bicycle rider killed at that intersection. I think that even though you get the walk sign to go across, it's extremely dangerous because there's a lot of people who want to make that free right turn, whether you're there or not, and you have to watch that like a hawk. So I think a light there is going to be immense help keeping those motorists attentive to the fact that there will be people coming across that. They're more focused on that right turn than they are anybody standing there waiting for the light. So I would be all in favor of that project going forward as soon as possible. Once again, we lost an individual at that intersection, and I sure would hate to see that happen again. Thank you.
And I've never nearly been hit there at the same intersection. I know it very well as well.
So maybe I'm going to take a moment and just say, I had the same comment, and there may be some others that are. I see Micah, Jerry, a few others, but maybe just take a moment and I also think that that's a huge priority. Are there a lot of people, and now is that widely agreed upon to be a huge priority, that fixing that? I mean, is there anyone that doesn't think that that's probably, of the things you showed me, that seems, yeah, getting a lot of nods. So rather than each of us have to take time to do that, I wanted to check that out. And then I think Julie made a good point about there may be more than one way to design that. The specific thing that you have in the presentation, I think is unique, which could make it really good. But I also think that design is different than prioritizing the project to make sure people stop there. So I don't know if those are separate discussions or not, but it sounds like we're in pretty agreement that that's a high priority. So I just wanted to check the temperature of the group and see if folks agreed. And so with that, we'll go, which it sounds like they do, lots of nods and thumbs up. So with that, we'll go to Micah for his question.
The no turn, no right turn light, is that always going to be tied to a signaled crosswalk, like a push button crosswalk?
Oh, we could tie it in different ways. Like, for example, I have seen it in Redmond to be tied not to a crosswalk specifically, but to a left turning movement, to have not those conflicting right turning going at the same time to the other side of the street turning left. So it doesn't necessarily have to be for a crosswalk. But yeah, there's many other ways that we could. Does get tied to a signal phase, if that's the question.
Yeah, I just I certainly agree with the value of those. I think they're an important safety feature, but I've seen a lot of intersections where you have a feature like that just it's on a schedule, or it's to time of the day or to light cycle, and there might be whole sections of the day where there are not people crossing. And so I don't want to have something that's the purpose is a safety feature to also impact traffic when it has no impact on safety.
Yes, I understand where you're going with this. Like, if there's a certain time of the day that it might not be as needed as any other. I am not quite sure if that would be possible, but that's something we could look into.
Do intersections that have a push button, are those generally safer for pedestrians than your screen sharing the chats again? Are those generally safer than ones without, like, because the pedestrian's going, I have to push this button, I have to wait, that makes it safer, or is that not really a factor?
Sorry, Mike, can you repeat? I just got blocked with my presentation again, blocking out. I don't know what's happening.
This is
But
just
yeah.
really just a follow-up question. So are crosswalks where there's a push button that you push and you have to wait for a signal, are those safer than the most closely equivalent crosswalk without that signal for pedestrians, because pedestrians go, I shouldn't cross now, this says don't cross? Or does that end up not actually increasing safety?
Yes, and that's my like professional opinion, like having those on when there's no pedestrian, that could give the driver a sense of not trusting, like, the signal. If the pedestrian signal is on, they would feel like on other locations it will be on with no pedestrians. And that would be my only, like, safety concern with having the pedestrian signal turned on without the push button, like, going all the time. When when it is allowed, it would be allowed. But yeah, it would be my only concern will be would be just that if the signal is on and the um, straight the through traffic, the traffic that would go with the pedestrian crossing, and if there's no pedestrian there, they could think that that's going to be the case on any other times.
We have if we're ready to move on to Jerry's question.
Sure. Please forgive the clock. It's almost done, if you can hear it. So, Isabel, I was mainly curious as to how you did select the projects you did. So I can really understand 56th Avenue because we've been through that a lot. You probably have recorded accidents there, quite a few. So it's a safety issue. But that other crosswalk in at 125th, have neighbors called and complained and said it was a dangerous area, or, so you're wondering how we should be prioritizing all these projects. And so I suppose safety is a number one issue, but how do you find out that there's a safety problem unless somebody calls you and complains, correct? Is that's really what
Yes, that
happens?
is part of it, and I might not have the detailed information of or the history about each one of the projects, but it could be a combination of that. Citizens calling, complaining about safety concerns at that location. Of course, when we hear more than one concern, yeah, that's a kind of a reason for us to dive deeper into that specific concern. Also from staff, even staff looking at different or potential locations where we could improve operations too. And it could be cross departmental. Other departments might, like the police department, could notice, oh, we are dealing with a lot of accidents going at this location. Communication with the police department also could bring into new projects that we are including on this list.
Do you gather safety information or accident information, or?
We do have that included on our GIS.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Okay, that's great. So, and is the public aware? I guess they would be. So, concerned citizens would call if they saw an unsafe location, right?
And
So,
I would like to add that the public is the biggest users of the system. So you are much more aware of traffic issues, and that's the reason why we're having these conversations with the board and I'm getting your feedback, because you are the ones who see our system more often, way more often than we do.
that's true. But then, yeah, I would say you definitely would prioritize by safety concerns from the public. But then perhaps if there's a way, a busier street, if it's just a residential street and there's maybe only 10 homes on it, it's not going to be as high priority as a larger street where it feeds into, 100 homes or something. So
Yeah,
that's something. And then the whole school idea, being close to a school, would actually trigger safety also. So
yeah, those are things that are considered well when we put our projects together. Like, how is there a safety risk? How many accidents are in this area? How many people does it serve? And things like that.
yeah. So, but it sounds like you already have a good prioritization plan.
We don't have a priority so far. We are hearing tonight from the board that the 56 and East Lake Sammamish Parkway is one that we should bump up in the priority system, but we don't necessarily have those prioritized right now. That's what we are seeking from the board tonight, how we can prioritize these projects.
Okay, so my comment was, safety number one. If there's been a lot of accidents, right? Just, you could prioritize based on the number of accidents. And then you could also prioritize based on how busy the road is. So that's my comment for prioritization.
Thanks, Sherry. Christy?
Yes, thank you. So building on Jerry's input, I also think, well, first of all, I want to say I'm really happy to see that this program's been implemented. I think that the city needs to have a tool that allows them to address emerging needs or maybe some unintended consequences. So in terms of additional prioritization, I think public comment, number of public comments and type should be an aspect. I think if council or the mayor's office has addressed a situation that needs resolved in the very short term, I also think that dollar amount or estimated dollar amount makes sense. And also if there's the opportunity to couple with, say, a private development or investment that's happening. If the city has an opportunity and only needs to throw in a little bit to really, say, complete a full line for the city that maybe is outside of the development envelope, that gives the city some resources to work with as well. And then one question I had, which I didn't see, and I think Connie Marsh asked, was what was the dollar amount for the budget for the capital projects? So I think that's how much?
Yes, so I believe, and John would correct me if I'm wrong, but it would be about $100,000. John, does that sound right?
That's correct. And I can't remember if it was 100,000 plus a little bit for inflation or if it was just 100,000, but pretty close to 100,000 for this project.
Yeah, so that's going to go really quick.
Yes.
Definitely. So I think that amount needs to definitely be in that prioritization. And then and then one other thing I wanted to provide input on the first question was about what other projects should be considered. Initially, when I was looking at the gaps that needed to be completed, I was thinking East Lake Sammamish and the Newport SR 900 connections, but understanding or maybe being reminded again that that dollar amount is $100,000. I don't think those apply at this time. And then I just wanted to make a note. I also noticed on the tier plan and in your presentation that 18 in the Hilo Crossing neighborhood was noted as not having connectivity. And I just wanted to share that that particular road is grandfathered in the Raleigh Properties Development Agreement. So you may want to look at that a little deeper.
Okay. Sure. Is it like is
So
the map showing up?
if you if you go to 17th Avenue Northwest and then you go to the west, up,
like
go
here?
up. That's 19th. Go to your right, the one in the middle. That's it's there. Over to the west, right?
Oh, it's not
Next
up
one.
here.
Yeah.
I don't know what, but it's
So like where that little blue dot is?
Yeah, and then go up. Yeah.
Oh, okay, this area here.
Yeah. And we can talk about that offline, but I just wanted to bring that up, that may be something you want to remove from the sidewalk projects.
Okay. Good.
Less money to spend.
Yes, thank you.
Trying to help. That's it.
Okay, so I'm next, and then Erica, and then Julian. So I have a comment and another project to bring up for considering. My overall comment is, and I really appreciated Jerry's question, is how did you come up with this list? Because I think it is, that's a little unclear to me. I really think this is a great program for a lot of reasons, at least the way I understand it. And I just think that maybe we should finish the task at hand on time. But I think in the future, since I assume this is an annual program, we may want to have a rudimentary prioritization methodology. And I would suggest it doesn't need to be the same rigorous methodology as you would have for larger projects, because that's the whole thing. It's to be nimble and efficient and opportunistic. And it could be observations, it could be complaint driven, it could be tab brought forward. It could also be things that where permit and design are going to be fairly straightforward, where there's in-house capability. So I just kind of made a few notes of things highly leveraged, opportunistic. So I think that having some sort of objective methodology for random opportunities is probably a good way to go about this. And I don't have another opinion. I think the tab's feedback is super, super important, but I always try to be mindful of the fact that I'm representing people I don't even know. So I don't, I don't want to have it just be the individual tab members' kind of pet projects, because we may or may not represent an appropriately diverse geographic or user base, of the community that we are here to serve, that we're all endeavoring to serve. But with that, I will say that I have my own project that I think is a super important project. And I met with some of the folks, and now I can't remember Kurt Seaman and to remember people who are not there anymore. But I know this is a washed-out responsibility, but I'm just going to throw it out there. The crossing, let's see, I guess it's when Sunset ends and you're going under I-90 to the Highlands, when you're on the south side and you're getting ready to cross the exit 18, and there's a major pedestrian facility. It's both a recreational facility as well as it can connect to transit as well. And so I think it's a pretty important intersection, and it's a terrifying intersection. So when you're exiting I-90 and you're going to go north on Highlands Drive, you have a channel turn there, you turn right, and getting across there, you have very poor sight lines on the north side of that intersection. And you also have the absent right-hand turn driver getting ready to merge onto I-90, and the pedestrians facing completely the wrong way. So the traffic that's the threat is far over your left shoulder. And I walked it with staff maybe 3 years ago, and they talked about having it be a priority that they could try to convince WashDOT, because they said that even though it's WashDOT, they do take influence. And so I don't know if that's the kind of thing that can be on small capital projects, and maybe simply because the city doesn't have that power to physically implement it wouldn't be eligible. But that just like fixing signage, paint, landscaping to increase visibility, getting WashDOT to do those things, I think would be huge. And I'm not aware of actual accidents, but I cross that intersection a lot, and it's always treacherous. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. And we have, this is not the first time we have heard of a concern of this location. And most probably this is the strategic small capital projects is not the right location for this type of projects. Since, again, it's inside WashDOT's right of way. But that's something that we can certainly reach out to WashDOT, which we have in the past.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if it gets on someone's list, even though it may not meet the criteria. Like, it feels like if it gets on a list, it's got a much better chance of having, even if it's literally just staff time to dedicate to hounding them, monthly, weekly, whatever. And maybe this isn't the place for it, but it's certainly a bit of an oddball. And yet if it doesn't get onto a list, if it's not if the staff isn't responsible for it, it just gets, that's why it hasn't gotten addressed, I think, probably because it's not really anyone's job. But if we made it a small capital project, even though the city staff doesn't necessarily have ultimate authority or jurisdiction, I don't know. Just a thought.
Yeah, like we can include it on, and even though if we don't necessarily allocate some money to it, but we do have it as a project, like some coordination project with WashDOT that could keep us continuing that coordination effort with them.
Thanks. Okay, so Erica?
I was gonna ask what crosswalks on Park Drive. I know I recognize one in the photo. Like that's the one I think closest to the school. If you're like, well, yeah, up the hill from the school. And then it said like you'll remove. So is it just that one crosswalk, or you're gonna remove like cars on like parking spots on either side of like 3 different ones? I was just trying to do the math of that in my head.
It'll be more like strategically looking at the area. What are those crosswalks that are most impacted with vehicles parking too close to the crosswalk?
Okay, so the specific ones haven't been identified yet. It's just we know that this is a problem.
Yeah.
Okay, I really appreciate. I think I brought that up a couple tab meetings ago, just about like when I've walked there and like, yeah, it's really hard. You'll go and like it feels like you're running out. Like if you're a driver, like the pedestrian is just running out, but it's not true. You've just been behind, that van, like that was in that photo. And so, yeah, I really appreciate that being a priority.
Julian.
Okay. So I think safety should be number one priority, of course. Again, with the 52nd Street intersection, I always tend to try to get around that somehow. I usually go down 220th and then hop back onto East Lake Sammamish from there. So that's a big priority. But also so with the tier system, I think there's some issues with that, in that we don't need a sidewalk on both sides on SR 900. I think it's very difficult to bike across the different small crosswalks on SR 900, just on boardwalks. It can be very unsafe to do that because of cars that don't see you very well. So how are you incorporating that sort of idea into the tier system?
I'd ask for that about Steven to help me out with that question, since he was more familiarized with the mobility master plan work.
Hi, everyone. So with the tier system with the mobility master plan, the intention was actually to identify projects the city is going to be doing. That was one of the SR 900 is primarily a WashDOT kind of jurisdiction of projects. So those are one of the things we'll be updating in our maps the next time we update the mobility master plan. In terms of what's considered unsafe, WashDOT actually has identified a lot of those corridors within urban areas to have sidewalks on both sides, not crosswalks. In order to satisfy kind of their own goals, the city supports a lot of them having the sidewalks on both sides, particularly for SR 900s, is somewhat important because we have mixed development along the corridor. And what we want to do is actually influence how WashDOT does their crossings more than where they put the sidewalks, because we think that's where a lot more of the conflicts are going to be experienced when it comes to safety improvements, at least in the corridors throughout the city. But that is one of the projects, at least on our map, that we'll be updating in the next process when we update the mobility master plan. So that's kind of on our list.
I'm just simply concerned that with the tier system, it's just going to be two unsafe boardwalks on either side, with all of the different turn-ins of intersections. Gilman Boulevard, for example, and on the other end of the intersection, there's that as well. There's right turning lanes, right turning cars, and then left turning cars. It can be quite unsafe to go there. Anyways, another big concern is cost of maintenance. How are you incorporating that cost of maintenance? Because you don't really. What good is a comprehensive sidewalk network without having that incorporated?
That is a good question. And for these costs that we have come up with, we are not considering, since those are small projects, we are not considering the maintenance on the cost. But yeah, that's something that we need to keep in mind, the maintenance of the cost of maintenance of these projects.
Yeah. I think that's it for now.
Thanks, Julian. Let's see if I'm tracking correctly. I think the next is Joseph and then David.
Yeah, so I had like a really quick question and then a comment. I know that Jerry already asked a really similar question, but my internet got bad and I didn't really hear the answer. I was curious, so for the sort of like safety plans that were brought up, or the strategic safety improvements that were brought up in the presentation, were those based on like I guess, were they brought up based off of like cost or like being more easily like replaceable or fixed, or were they like brought up because there have been like safety issues brought up by the public before, sort of like why those were selected to be brought up in the presentation?
And I would say that all of those aspects that you have asked about do have to do with the list of this project. The cost, yes, because since we are talking about small strategic capital projects, we're asking of those projects that we could do in-house, and the main investment would be the materials. So for the cost, since this is an ongoing program as well, so we are not looking at like bigger capital projects that they would be like a capital project by themselves because of the cost. Also, the safety, because that's one of the main goals of this program, to improve safety too. And as we were discussing, responding to Jerry's comment, yes, it is part of concerns brought up by the public, observations from staff, as well or from other departments, and we do take into consideration safety measures like traffic accidents that have occurred in the location. How many users the locations have, like how the traffic volumes on those streets, how big is the impact of the concerns.
Yeah, okay. Well then I guess I want to make like a really quick or like some really quick comments. I think that I really agree with what David Wagner said earlier about like the like no right turn signal. I think that like a lot of people decide to take the right turn on a red light, so it's kind of important to have that sign up. But also like relating to what Julian said earlier, I think that it's really important to have like prioritize safety, but on top of that, I also think it's important to try and prioritize equity, since that's something that the board's like talked about in earlier meetings. So if that's like applicable in any way, it should be considered. Maybe like whatever projects help the greatest amount of people, or prioritizing like areas that don't get a lot of projects in them but still needs some consideration towards like renovation or like improvement of like transportation infrastructure. Also, I guess one possible project that I think should be considered I know that it's on the transportation improvement plan, but I'm not entirely sure what the idea for it was. But the intersection from Sunset Way to Newport Way, there's an intersection that goes into the city where whenever there's a green light, the car can take a right turn, go straight, or take a left turn. And I think that that is kind of dangerous for pedestrians and should be like reconsidered. Since like cars can turn like any direction.
Yes, on that, if you can let me know a specific location, that's something, if it's something we can look into, yes, sure, we can include that on our list of projects, or observe what we could do to help improving the operations.
Okay, thank you.
David, you're up.
Thanks, Cynthia. Thank you, Cynthia. I want to be very courteous to time. I know that Stephen's still going to talk about transit. I don't want to take any more time on this, but I do have a small project for safety that I would like to talk about, and it doesn't have to be tonight, but definitely would like to get my foot in the door to talk about it. And I have a longer comment about that right turn light, and use the Gilman the new turn signal, the new intersection light at Gilman and Juniper.
Juniper.
Correct. I would like to talk about that with the thought process of that 56th Avenue in mind. So I want to be sensitive to time. So I'll be glad to relinquish my questions so we can go on. But I would like to have some other time in the future to talk about this very same subject.
Dave, can I encourage you to go ahead and talk about it now, because we did discuss this with Stephen and on our chairs meeting, that this is the priority and they do need to get, I think, to get to a place, and the transit can wait. So why don't you go ahead?
Okay, thank you. I really wanted to get to transit as a retired transit operator, but let me go ahead with this. So the comment I have with that red turn light, I've been very impressed with that new intersection with Gilman and Juniper. And watching that turn light, it seems to me when nobody pushes the walk sign, because that's a little different for the intersection because they walk all directions. But when nobody pushes that button, then that right turn light doesn't come on. It's just a signal change. Correct me if I'm wrong. John maybe knows more about it than I do, but that has decreased all the accident potential that's been happening for many, many years at that intersection. I would love to see that same thought process at 56th. I have personally almost been hit at 56th, and many friends almost hit at 56th, and I'm all in favor of, however we do it, prioritizing, Isabel, that we make that one of the first things out of the gate, because that is really going to save lives over there, more than any of the other projects you talked about tonight. But that's my opinion. And I see that as important. My project that I'm very selfish about, like Cynthia was with hers, I live off of Dogwood Street. When you're westbound on Northwest Dogwood Street, you come to Newport. You cannot see the street or the sidewalk. It's not really a sidewalk. It's a path. Now, you cannot see that in either direction unless you pull into the crosswalk and ease out so you can see. I have seen more accidents there in the last 17 years than what needs to happen. What needs to be cleared is the house. If you're going westbound on Dogwood Street and you look, there's a holly tree, big clump of holly tree right there that will not allow you to see up that road. And at night, since it's not well lit, you can't see pedestrians coming up to that roadway. I think that small project, because I don't see it being much more than clearing and lighting that intersection, that would save a lot of grief for our citizens. And with that, I'll shut up.
Did you guys catch that? Because I didn't catch precisely. Could you just repeat the precise proposal?
It is the right turn, left turn from Northwest Dogwood at Newport. It's you have to turn left or you have to turn right. The other thing I forgot to mention is if you're coming on Newport Way and wanting to make a left turn or a right turn onto Dogwood, you have that same vision issue. You cannot see. It's been a safety issue for years, and the city needs to address it very, very soon. Multiple accidents there. I don't believe we've lost any lives there like we have on 56th, but very, very poorly designed intersection.
Is that where you're coming up Newport? Is if you're traveling southbound Newport Way and you're coming up to Dogwood to take a left here to go to the library?
Correct.
That intersection. Okay, and it's on a vertical curve right through the intersection because you have the downslope. So there's a sight distance, vertical sight distance.
No. I think you're thinking if you're going to the library, that's a different one, Tom.
Different one, yes.
There's a law office right on the corner. It's very difficult to see. I know which one you're talking about. I also want to say that when I first moved to the area, because I lived just a few blocks from there, there was a car in the ditch. So the drainage ditches are really steep right there. And every now and again, and my neighbor said, oh yeah, that happens about once every other year. Somebody ends up in that ditch. And yeah, it sure seems to me that it would be, even though we don't have a formal criteria. Sorry, I'm next. So I'm just, I guess I'm sort of speaking out of turn, but yeah, I'm concurring with him, and it seems like simple fixes, even though that whole corridor is slated to be upgraded, if it's a low cost, something can be done in-house. It's very difficult to spot where Dogwood is when you're coming from either direction.
Correct.
Even though I live on Dogwood, I still have trouble seeing it and remembering exactly where to brake and signal and whether I'm on my bike or in my car.
And not well lit, Cynthia, and not well lit at all.
Yeah. So I was just going to make a general comment that I do think it's important to separate a little bit design from projects. So we may have an opportunity to figure out, or maybe not, I'm not sure exactly what the assignment will be for the tab, but I think it's important to figure out which projects are the priority and then let the experts who do this for their day job propose the actual method to achieve the objective that we are agreeing. And maybe this is a good time, Isabel, for you to reflect back. I guess maybe I wanted to make a last call for other projects that people are aware of that are not included in here. Oh, Julian had a comment. Oh, yes. Julian, why don't you go ahead and make your comment, and then why don't we make a last call for a specific. Thank you, Christy. Go ahead, Julian.
So I forgot to mention one thing in my comments, and that's connectivity. So I think that's a very high priority, not just from home to destination, but just in general, the network of sidewalks and bike lanes. Bike lanes aren't included, of course, but at the 62nd roundabout, You know, there's a little bikeway from East Lake Sammamish goes into the roundabouts. I'm not sure if anyone uses that because it just seems to end nowhere really. So I think it's really important to make sure that this kind of applies to the sidewalks too. It's important to make sure that we fill in every single gap, and you know, maybe we spend a little bit more to get that final few hundred feet or so, few dozen feet, because ending sidewalks in the middle of nowhere is kind of not very great. Anyways, that's just my comment.
Thanks, Julian. Do we have any other burning projects that people, because that was one of her questions. Are we missing anything? So I just wanted to kind of make a last call before we wrap up, and then maybe Isabel, I don't know if you want to summarize kind of what you're hearing and what you think would be next. It looks like Erica's got a comment, but Erica, can you, rather than have us read that, can you go ahead and share real time?
I can. It's not, I don't think this is an issue for TAB, but I think one of the problems as well as for the Sammamish 56 is that I've been in that turn lane trying to take, like, double checking to before I take that free right, because I know there's, you know, been pedestrians there, but then the guy behind me will honk, like it's such an entitlement. And I just think that's probably more of like a driver awareness thing, or that needs to like be retaught in like driving school or something. But I think that also might add to like some of that pressure of that situation, or if like it depends on who's behind you, because they can't see who's crossing the crosswalk.
Thanks. So it sounds like we've, good job, everybody. We heard from everybody, so thank you. I think we heard some common themes. I see Isabel's taking notes. Do you want to kind of summarize what you heard? This doesn't sound like we actually take formal action, but it is good to know, because you know, we all have slightly different opinions, and we want to act as a board to provide kind of a unified feedback to you all. So
I'll summarize what I've heard, and if I am missing anything, or if anything sounds like it's not right, let me know. It seems from the project list that we have presented, the Southeast 56 and East Lake Sammamish Parkway had a general go ahead with the board, like a general priority on that one. In terms of additional projects, we have heard like Dogwood at Newport to provide or enhance visibility. Seems like street lighting and visibility obstructions at that intersection going westbound is a huge concern. And also the I-90 ramps and Front Street, although that intersection is not is inside city right of way, just keeping it on our list of projects to do in coordination with WashDOT would keep us moving from doing something on that. In terms of priority, seems like we should take into consideration the cost, traffic volumes, number of traffic accidents or accident history on those locations, and sidewalk to provide priority to sidewalk connectivity. And that's about my summary. If I am missing anything, please feel free to jump in.
Can I ask, by connectivity, do you mean like connectivity to services, or like gaps in the
So
sidewalk?
like gaps, missing gaps on sidewalk. Is there anything else I should include on as to summarize?
So now we're in this betwixt and between because we don't quite have enough time for transit. Item 4C. We've got about just under 20 minutes left to go. Stephen, 20.
Maybe we get started.
Yeah, do you want to get it started, or do we want to get out of class early?
I'm concerned if we start it, we might like build up some questions and then run out of time. And then like, I'm gonna do my best to write stuff down, but like stuff might just fly out my head by the time we get to next month when we take this up again. That's my only concern.
Stephen, how about if you just frame it and then remind us what the task is? I know this was just going to be information. Maybe just frame it and we'll bring it in next time.
Sure, would it help for me to show a couple slides so to help kind of frame it all? It's easier to kind of show than me talk about it than anything else. The kind of the main, see if I can share my screen. Let me. All right, so the main thing is that with the pandemic, the city of Issaquah kind of experienced a huge cut, or not cut, but suspension of multiple services, which resulted in only 3 routes actually staying in service throughout the pandemic. And with this upcoming fall service change, we'll actually be getting most of those services back. Some will be partial. Only 2 routes will remain suspended. That's Route 200 and Route 219, which will be considered for potentially bringing them back next spring or at the latest next fall. King County Council did approve in the budget to bring back all suspended services, but they didn't leave out any of the potential options for cutting any services that had low ridership or had low performance, and with the consideration of reinvesting those services into something else in the community. And so we'll be kind of updating the board later on about that. The biggest thing I wanted to kind of bring to the board's attention was just the city's efforts to advance transit. And I won't go into that tonight. I'll go into that next time when I have the presentation, just so I don't go too much onto the board's time and cause you all to have more questions. But there any questions, at least on the current side of transit services?
Go ahead, Julian.
So I was looking at the slide deck earlier this week before I went on my trip. There you include sound transit realignment. What is the city doing in terms of advocating its position to the county or to sound transit itself in terms of realignment and what options we could have?
Sure. So the city council, several city council members have membership on regional boards. Since we don't have a position on the Sound Transit Board, we're actually leveraging a lot of partnerships within the region to work with the Sound Transit Board and the Sound Transit staff on a timeline for implementation of the Sound Transit 3 package, which includes the light rail coming to Issaquah. Currently, the package is, there's no proposed change yet. There is a chair. If you look at the last Sound Transit Board meeting, there you can find a chair's realignment proposal. that's not the final proposal. It's still being worked on. So when I have more information about that on what's going to be considered for a chair vote, I'll send that out to the board.
I see Micah and David.
So how are the decisions being made? Like, what are you looking at to decide which routes to bring back? And what's the plan for responding to demand as opposed to just having, you know, some set date for return to service?
So Metro, a few months back, sent out regional surveys to everybody in consideration of recovery, and they used that in their budgeting proposal with the King County Council, which was approved a couple months ago. And part of that proposal was actually the decision to bring back certain services using kind of their evaluation tools they have in place right now. Some of that is considering equity. Other that is considering performance metrics, which is looking at ridership, which is looking at the amount of what's kind of been the trend over the last few years for what's ridership. Is it growing? Is it getting worse? What's the planned land use, if any, development in the considered area? So Metro is actually looking, doing much better when considering changes to upcoming ridership, but at the same time, there's still more to be done. They're actually considering making changes to a lot of those policies at this time. But to answer your question, the city didn't have, we don't have control over which routes come back when. It's King County Metro that controls all that. We do try to work with Metro in terms of, like, we pushed out the Metro survey to the community to respond both to Metro and Sound Transit surveys on how they wanted to approach recovery. And we also worked with Metro staff when it comes to considerations for the different routes and impacts it might have on different community members. And I think Dave Wagner had a question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Stephen. It's more of a comment. You have on that suspended list the 218. I know that they're running the 218 now from the Highlands Park and Ride in. They're only running 40 footers, but that tells me that that's back on track. So actually, you've got 4 on active service with that 218. So it's not suspended anymore.
Some of the budget requests that Metro put in place was to potentially bring back services starting last month. So the 218 was probably one of those routes that they were able to make happen sooner than later. But thank you for bringing that up.
And that's a very important route because it doesn't stop really in downtown Issaquah, doesn't do the flyover stop on the way out of town at Eastgate. So it's really a very popular route to get people to ride.
Similar with the 217, also direct downtown from the parking lot.
Great. Is there any other questions?
Go on from Julian.
So it's going to be a while until all the services is going to be restored, particularly Route 200. Probably, next year, as you said. Are there any alternative methods of in-town mobility that you're considering? Like, we're not really much of a big city yet, but like bike share or something like that. And it wouldn't be just temporary. It would last for a much longer time as we keep growing as a city.
Bike share. So first last mile options like bike share have been discussed at the city with our regional partners, but also in response to the growth of those type of mode share modes or travel options kind of throughout the region. The city of Issaquah hasn't really come to a decision on when bike share should be kind of implemented within the city. It's something that's still in consideration, but there's hesitation just because we have not had as much development with our infrastructure to support bike share systems as a lot of our surrounding cities. And so that's a big concern, something that we're hoping to make improvements on in kind of the near future. And some of the fluctuation with bike share companies or even scooter share companies have kind of been in question too. And so some of it is waiting to see how the market plays, but also giving us time to build up our infrastructure to make it a more comfortable system for bike share and scooter share to even operate.
Erica had something to share.
I know the Highlands has a van, like it's something that you can use for like van pool options. But that is something that I think they got from King County Metro themselves. It's like a retired van that's been kind of rehabbed. But that is kind of appointment only, or getting in contact with the executive director of the at Blakely Hall there. So that's an option. I think they're still kind of sussing out how they're going to fully use that. But I know it was doing runs, or was an option for taking folks to the cooling center, things like that. I think it's for like seniors is like a target, but it's more of a like neighborhood option.
And thank you, Eric. You reminded me of the other part of Julian's question. So it's in terms of what else the city is considering. City Council actually just approved for staff to look into a partnership with King County Metro to consider some type of shuttle service or flexible service with Metro to pilot within the city, potentially in the Tallis squawk neighborhoods, but also to consider expansion of that type of program in more parts of the city. More information will kind of come out once we get more details as we develop the partnership with Metro.
Yeah, I saw all of those items in the budget, particularly the community shuttle, of Highlands, and the King County's program to retire various vans and let various community groups use those. I'm just saying that bike share in particular is quite amazing for just in-town mobility. I've been using it around Chicago, so.
Are we gonna move on for now on transit and come back to it then another time?
That's it for me, unless the board would like more information. But not seeing any more questions.
Yeah. So not seeing any. It sounds like we'll move on to 5A. You want to review the work plan? And now we already know there's one change. Is that Isabel or Stephen?
Yes, I am trying to pull that up from the website. Let me to. Okay, so next up for the August meeting. So now we will be moving the transit discussion, the more detailed transit discussion for the next meeting. We had on our list to also continue with the discussion about the transportation improvement program project update in the project of Northwest Sammamish Road non-motorized project discussion. And actually, we did have the transit discussion for that one, the continuation of that one. So it seems like we will still have those 3 topics on the agenda for next meeting.
Is there anything else to discuss on the work plan?
Do we go into the next for the rest of the year on this one? I can go into all of them.
I just think it's important, maybe, and Stephen, I don't know if you want to go through this. I just think it is important to just note that it sounds like we'll be revisiting the racial equity discussion, which is, I know, a high priority.
Yes, and we have that for September meeting, scheduled for September meeting for now. And
I was also just going to add with in the staff report tonight, just kind of a brief update.
All right, are we there? Do we want to get to that?
Sure. Just to follow up from our previous discussions on racial equity and kind of continuing the momentum, I wasn't able to have a meeting with our consultant yet. That's scheduled in the next few weeks. There was some scoping issues why I couldn't meet with her yet, but I'm going to be continuing the conversation with her on figuring out how to keep up the momentum with the Transportation Advisory Board to discuss racial equity, but also figure out other discussion items that the board could be considering as we wait for the city to develop its own equity assessment framework. And if you want more information about that, the city staff, a small group of city staff actually met with the city council earlier this week to discuss that. And it was an interesting conversation. I won't go too much into it, but if you'd like to learn more, I would look at the study session materials from earlier this week. That's it from me. Anything from John or Isabel?
Yes.
Yeah,
So,
I've got-
go ahead, John.
I've got one to add, and I think Isabel might have one. Earlier this year, the city applied for 3 different grants to do overlays on city streets, and 2 of our projects were selected, which means soon we'll begin design to do an overlay on East Lake Sammamish Parkway from Black Nugget Road to 50th, and then on Southeast 43rd from the roundabout at East Lake Sammamish Parkway up until just before the Providence Ridge subdivision.
Okay, and for me,
Well done. Yay.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just saying that's cause for celebration. Well done.
Yes, it is. So for the streetscape plan, that one is still moving forward with construction plan to start within the next couple of months. I think that's what we have for staff report.
I don't have a chair report. I made some comments earlier about the training, and that was really useful, and Sujata was able to attend as well. That's about it. Do we have a youth report?
I don't have a youth report today.
All right. Any other announcements?
Cynthia, may I make just one quick historical comment?
Please.
So when I was a youth, and I lived out on Hobart Road, one of my greatest fears was breaking down on the Hobart Road on the way home because I knew that there would be no cars coming by to get a ride or rescue. I just wanted you guys to know that there was a time in life when that really existed. It doesn't exist anymore, but there was a time in life when that existed.
Thanks, David.
Especially on a double date.
Oh my goodness. All right. Well done, team. Look, it's 8 o'clock sharp. If there's nothing else, I propose we adjourn. Thank you all. Appreciate all the great thoughts and yeah, looking forward. We got one more Zoom and then we'll be in the flesh.
Thank
It's
you.
been good.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thanks, guys.
Weekend.
Right.